Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Social Media from Crisis to the New Normal. My name is JC Quimbow, and I'm a marketing manager at Arm Treasure Data, and I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Carter Hastelli. Carter is the founder and CEO of Betail, a social media agency that works with technology brands and venture-backed startups. Carter is a relentless advocate for the importance of social media and influencer marketing as a way to break through the noise with target buyers and effectively compete against marketplace incumbents. A recorded version of this webinar will be available to share with your team. Feel free to also view the attachments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions during or after today's session, please feel free to submit them below, and we'll do our best to answer them. Take it away, Carter.
All right, JC, thanks. It's great to be speaking with everyone today on this webinar. The first sort of broad comment I would like to make is, we're going to be chatting about social media in the context of the pandemic and sort of moving through the stages of that. But many of the comments that I'm going to be making today really apply to managing social in any crisis. So definitely keep that in mind. And the first thing I want to highlight, I really am still having too many conversations with marketers and social media folks today that have effectively stopped their marketing plans. Okay, they don't know what to do for Q4, they don't know what to do for the fall, they don't know what to do for, summer. It's as if they're deer in the headlights. And the first thing I want to be really clear with everyone on is when a crisis hits, when things are starting to, be a point where we have to think about things, the last thing we want to do is stop on our tracks. We need to keep moving forward. Now, clearly, with everything we've all gone through in the pandemic and any other crises, we do need to revisit the prior plan. We do need to say, hey, maybe it's time for a change in plan. Now, when we think about crises and specific to this pandemic, we really need some sort of framework to give us an idea of what to do. So you'll see here on this slide, I've put together sort of the three stages of managing through a crisis. The current stage, is going to be one of the following three. And I want to highlight to begin with that you can move back and forth depending on what happens, right? So the stage all of us went through in middle of March was something of, am I safe? So anytime we're in a crisis where it's literally, am I and my family safe, then we're going to be thinking about social differently. Okay, the social we push out on our channels really needs to be essential content. Okay, it's about what we're doing and it's information and it's these other things. Okay, we can stop if we don't have any essential content. We can stop the frequency. We definitely can decrease from what we normally do. And if we're running promotions, demand gen campaigns on the B2B side, we really want to stop these or decrease these. And if I put a sense of things, I would really say, obviously, the first couple of weeks of this pandemic back in March was when we all felt this question of, am I safe? And it was really a time to be thinking about that. The next stage, which I would say we went through for sure in April when we're all working from home and getting used to that, is what I call change in patterns. Okay, we're learning new patterns. We're learning how to work and have our kids at home and all of that stuff that we've all been going through, right? And in this stage, it's really about what I call reading the room. It's really about taking the temperature of our audience and getting a sense of where they are. We're probably still in some mode of decreasing frequency, but depending on who our customers are, we may be posting on social and being active on social like we regularly would be. Okay, and same sort of comment around demand generation. The third stage I've listed here is the new normal. Now the new normal, we may not be until Q4 of this year. We may be maybe Q1. Your guess is as good as my guess. But the key here is our social and literally our marketing strategy needs to be built around whatever the new business model is for our customers, not our business model, but our customers' business model. Okay? And at this point, with that said, we can be posting on a regular basis again, and our promotions and our demand gens can sort of go back to normal, given that normal is defined by how our customers are interacting in sort of the new world order. The other thing I want to highlight here, and we've all heard this on the news, things are starting to open up again, but we could have a spike again in the virus in the fall. Maybe we have to go back to stay at home again, So we could go from change in pattern stage back to am I safe, or we could move into the new normal. So you want to have a good sense of these things, and then let the overall social strategy be driven by this framework. Now, the key is, as I said, and this is sort of our North Star with social, is what's going on with our customers, okay? Whether they're consumers or segments of consumers, or whether they're business customers, okay? And the other thing I want to highlight is for different businesses, their customers may be in different stages. So for many B2C companies that are an airline, restaurant, rental car, ride sharing, they're in stage one. Okay, they have an existential risk to their companies, right? Their customers do not want to jump on planes because they don't feel safe yet. On the other hand, we work with a number of B2B tech companies, and they really are in stage two. And they really have continued to move forward in a way that is more about reading the room than it is stopping what they're doing. Now, I did a similar presentation about a month and a half ago, and it really was focused around sort of stage one, stage two. But at this point, as we're moving into the opening up the country again sort of stage, and we can start to at least imagine the new normal, I encourage all of us to be thinking about what will the new normal mean for our customers, and by extension, what will that mean for our content strategies and our marketing plans, and then finally, what will that mean for the campaigns and the day-to-day activities of our social media. Now, one of the things we do know, and I think all of us are aware of this, is that because people have been stuck at home, they're using social media more. And this is some research from Global Web Index. They're a global market research firm, and they've sort of been surveying a whole bunch of countries and consumers at these countries throughout this crisis. And they recently, I think it was end of April, released some new research on this. And it really showed that 47% of the people that they surveyed said that they're using social more than they normally did while they're essentially stuck at home, no surprise. And that 15% really expect this higher use of social to continue even after the pandemic. So the good news is here, since this is all in the context of social media, our audiences and our buyers are stuck at home and are on social. So when we think about, how to engage with these folks and do social, during this crisis period and to the new normal, I've listed a number of things here. And look, the truth is, much of this is common sense. There's nothing here I'm going to tell you that you don't know. You just have to turn it into, something that becomes part of your social playbook. Now, content marketers on the phone will really be going, hey, and have been going, hey, we've got to rethink about what our content roadmap is and the type of content to share. Now, the truth is, from a social standpoint, our focus really is less about the content that our brands and companies put out, and more about the graphics that we're using, the headline blurbs we're using in the post, and making sure we're being sensitive and using the right tone. The other thing is we're really in a period now that it is really about being human, being someone that is part of the larger global community that is going through this stuff. It is not the time to be overly promotional. It is not the time to do anything that compromises longer-term brand trust. So being simple, being straightforward, being supportive of what's going on is really key. For many companies, we have been, trying to help in a broader way, and I'll show a couple examples. But it makes a ton of sense to highlight anything our brands or companies are doing to sort of help what's going on. Okay? It really is about brand now. And since we work with many B2B companies, typically we think about brand versus demand generation content. But now it's really about brand. How do we establish ourselves as trusted brands, thought leaders? The content we want to share is much more educational, is how to think about it. The other thing that's unique about this crisis is that it is a shared experience, meaning it's absolutely okay to talk about it on social and reference it on social. Okay, and typically when I talk to clients about crises, and many of these, have some sort of tinge of folks having opinions and taking different stances on these things. I typically recommend staying out of it and not referencing and not getting pulled in and having to deal with trolls on Twitter or whatever. But this situation, the pandemic, is different because it is such a global shared experience. Okay. The one thing I will highlight is I do not recommend hashtagging coronavirus or some version of that. The reason is, number one, you don't want your post showing up in some social feed search with posts that are talking about global death counts and things like that. Number two is you don't want to look like you're taking advantage of all the conversations around the virus to promote, whatever it is that your brand is doing. Okay. I've had conversations with clients around sort of what is the emotional tinge of this? What is the central emotional thematic? And it really is empathy. It really is being empathetic, and it really is, I talked about branding before, but it really is about how do we build our communities, build trust within our communities, exhibit that we're helping our communities. And these are sort of the central ways to think about it. And the challenge for everyone on the phone is thinking about how to operationalize that. But the bottom line is our social feed today should not look like it did 3 months ago. So one of the things I put together for this presentation is I really said, hey, let's do a snapshot a little bit back in time to sort of what all of us were tweeting about and sharing back in Q4 last year. And this is MarTech professionals, but it's a pretty broad group of CMOs and digital marketers and others that tweet about or have something in their profile that gives us some indication that they're interested in marketing technology. Okay, and we have a panel. Think about it like a survey panel. We have a panel of, it's about 350 of these folks that are active on Twitter. Okay, and our tools pull this data. But if you take a look at this, it is what you would absolutely expect if you're talking about marketing, MarTech, customer experience, technology, all these sort of things. Now this is Q4 last year. If we fast forward now to Q1 of this year, you'll see that they're talking about coronavirus. I mean, it is so big and central to the thematic. So our feeds, should not ignore this. Our feeds should not be as if, they were from back in the day now when we all lived in a different world 3 months ago. Now, from a practical matter, what does that mean? What type of content can we share that isn't taking advantage of the situation, isn't too promotional, but makes it so that our feed doesn't look like, we're living in the old days of last year. So there's a few sort of central things. Number one, as I mentioned before, is we can highlight what we're doing to help. And I've got a few examples here. So there's Tesla talking about, how they're starting to make ventilators. Okay, there's MailChimp has put together information around the virus. So there's a few examples here. Now, obviously, everyone on the phone doesn't work for a giant enterprise that's been doing amazing stuff to help out, right? So this example on the top right is DoubleTree, and they do cookies, if you've ever been to one of the DoubleTrees, and really what they've done is they've done a short video of making cookies, and they link to their cookie recipe. Okay, so even if there's not something, massive we've done to help with the effort, even if something simple, sharing that and talking about it is a great thing to do. Also, especially if we're a smaller company, we can share what our customers are doing to help. We can share what our partners are doing to help. Okay, so it doesn't literally have to be us, but it's acknowledging what others are doing in a way that, as I said before, makes our feed be much more reflective of what's happening in the current times. Now, as I mentioned before, one of the things we want to be thinking about as we move purely from the lockup, stay-at-home stage to the things are opening up again, and then finally to the new normal, this notion of what we're doing to help should also move forward with that. So even the Tesla example I have here may feel a little bit dated because it's talking about ventilators, right? So think about, from a social standpoint, are there things we can do to help as we move into sort of opening the country up again? Are there things we can do to help as we start to understand what the new normal is for our customers, right? The next sort of example I want to highlight here is we want to acknowledge the current situation we're in. And a lot of us saw early on, in the second half of March and going into the first week of April, a lot of the shots of folks, on calls and Zoom and all of that. And those were good because they were acknowledging what we're all going through. And I've got a few, examples here. And this Delta one is a good one. And you'll see they just did this one, I think it was on May 20th, so last week, the other day, is they're making it about other people. And they're acknowledging that we're all sort of stuck stay at home still. And so they're asking for selfies. And you'll see that this was one of the, if you look at their feed, you'll see this is one of the most popular posts they've done recently with over 600 likes and 266 replies. Right. You'll see the Starbucks one is another good example. They're calling it a mini escape. So they're not using sort of the words of, during this unprecedented time or during the crisis. They're just acknowledging by saying a mini escape. And then there's a Chipotle just showing sort of what we originally planned and what 2020 is turning into. Okay. The main message here is they're acknowledging the current situation. Okay, I've got some B2B examples. You should definitely download the deck to see some of these. But obviously our friends at Arm Treasure Data are providing tips on working from home. You'll see the folks at Procurify on the B2B side. They actually recently did a contest to send in the picture of what your little home office setup looks like. And the winners, they give $2,500 to upgrade their working from home. So they're acknowledging the current situation and tying it in, but they're tying it in a way that they're making it about other people. Okay, and this is really the way to think about it. And again, even now, some of these that were just from a few weeks ago may feel a little dated. The main message here is, how is the situation changing, and how do we make sure our feeds reflect whatever that current situation is? And I would say that this thematic should always be the case, irrespective of the fact that we're in a pandemic now. Central theme of social should always be make it about others and thank them. Okay, so within our social content calendars, even if you hard code in there once a week, do a tweet, right, where you're thanking somebody. Okay, it could be someone in the community, it could be your workers, it could be whomever, but thank someone. Okay, thank your customers for sticking with you, whatever it is. Okay, there's an interesting example I have here in the bottom right, which is Blue Jeans. And thanking others may simply be, thank you for sharing our content. Okay, so it doesn't have to be as somewhat grandiose as thanking, healthcare workers or thanking police it can just be thanking your own community for sharing a piece of content. Okay, it is really that thematic that says, increasingly think about community, think about building trust in community. Okay, so the notion of thank you is very important. And I wanted to have one example here of just, how to think about things. Now this is someone sharing on social a sign, but I thought it was so signifying how we have to be careful as social media marketers and as marketers as a whole to make sure we are not being tone deaf, and obviously showing a Pepsi promotion next to the fact that this is a testing site is just extremely tone deaf. And the truth is we also have to be ready and have a little bit of a strategy around how do we respond if some aspect of marketing does something that is tone deaf and it pops up on social. So we really have to keep this in mind as we move through the stages. So given that, what is our action plan? How do we start to, as I touched on a little bit, how do we start to, operationalize this? So here are sort of 6 steps to take now. Number 1, as best you can, try to understand what stage your customers and audience are in. Okay? Are they in an industry that is still having an existential threat, i.e. sort of that, am I safe, stage 1? Are they in the, new patterns, okay, where they're having to do things differently, but they're not yet in the new normal? Or are they starting to move into new normal where we're starting to understand, how best to engage them, right? So getting a beat on that, our customers and how they engage on social is always our North Star. Let me emphasize that. Okay. Take a look at the content roadmap, take a look at the social calendar to make sure we're not being tone deaf. And as I mentioned before, a lot of it's going to be the graphics. At this point, I know I don't have to say, don't show a photo of people shaking hands. Okay. But as we go into summer, even be sensitive to photos of people at beaches and all these other things. And it is okay to use, absolutely okay to use graphics that show people doing social distancing, right? Same with the headlines. Let's not have any headlines talking about viral, talking about the editorial calendar is now dead. Just be sensitive to that. Okay. Build into your social content calendar, slot in these things that, as we talked about, reflect how we're helping given the current environment. Okay, that acknowledge what others are doing. So build these in. Look for opportunities to shine the light on others. Again, this is a central thematic of how I look at social. We should be always doing this anyway. But this can be customers, partners, employees, people within the community. Okay, and think about brand. Think about trust. Think about empathy. This is about building community. Those that manage through this next period of stage 2 to the next to new normal, okay, are really the brands that are going to come out of this, in decent to good shape. Now, one of the things I want to take just a moment on is many of us are also doing social media advertising. And to some degree, I've talked about this broadly, and I've talked about this from the context of organic social, and the same thematics are going to sort of pop up here as we talk about paid for a moment. So yes, social advertising and promotion is absolutely fine. Okay, again, depends on who your audience is, and let me say the obvious: travel industry isn't back yet, but it's there's some indications, etc. So think about what stage your customer is at. And that'll tell you, is it okay to do promotions or not? Generally, I would say it is fine to do social advertising, but same concept. Super sensitive to graphics copy being tone deaf, shifted toward brand building versus demand gen and driving buy now offers. Okay. And let me take a moment to talk about promotional stuff. Okay. You can still do promotional e-commerce stuff, but really focus on, things like sales and offers, because folks are going to be more inclined to buy things that are on sale now, given their budgets. They're putting off bigger ticket purchases. Just be very, very sensitive to that. And what we're telling clients is move forward to your ad campaigns. Maybe in month one, week one, cut the spend back a little bit and give it a moment. And then obviously monitor whatever comments are being generated by your social advertising to see if you should pause or change the ads or change the copy. And obviously a lot of you may have run social ad campaigns that still get snarky comments or the occasional thing. So really, you be the judge of whether this is more than you would normally see. The other thing I would highlight is this is also a good time to giving extra love to organic posts that have done really well, especially if an organic post has done well where you're helping customers or you're helping the community, put some ad dollars behind that to drive that a little bit. Absolutely makes more sense. And literally, when I think about sort of the B2B side in particular, where we may have put the call to action on the Facebook ad as download now, I would really recommend to say, hey, maybe we should shift it instead to be the learn more. So it slants more educational than promotional. So what are we seeing with clients? We really are seeing the vast majority of them sort of continue to move forward. And I would say one of the biggest sort of, the biggest sort of things that I saw that I didn't necessarily know how it would play out is I really saw, especially on the B2B side, that the customers just kept going. They had heightened sensitivity. We had a lot of conversations with customers about how best to manage this environment. But they definitely, by and large, kept promoting, kept doing these sort of things. The other thing that I wasn't sure of, but discovered pretty quickly is a lot of folks were using the time stuck at home, kind of like we are today, to maybe participate in more webinars and participate in more things around educational content. So we really saw lots of folks continue to download educational and thought leadership pieces. We continue to see good ad performance. And again, we're highly sensitized to being tone deaf, the graphics, everything we've already talked about. So I would say that at least to this point, we should definitely continue to sort of move forward. As I said at the very beginning of the presentation, that we don't want to be a deer in the headlights. Okay, we really need to be thinking about it. A number of our clients are already thinking about what does the new normal mean and how do we start to create content around our views on the new normal, and then how do we start to think about the content strategies and how social can help beyond the things like the online events, et cetera. And JC, at this point, I think I've sort of done the Speak At Folks part of the program, and very happy to entertain any questions that have come in.
Thank you, Carter. Great presentation. Yeah, we'll take some questions now from the audience. Looks like this first one's for you. So what have been the biggest surprises for you regarding social media since we entered the crisis?
Yeah, and I touched on that a moment ago, but let me deepen a little bit. I think there's really three big surprises, right? So the first one was how much of a shared experience this was sort of out the gate, and I'll define that as sort of mid-March, and that how quickly folks were talking about the shared experience, and then how quickly brands and businesses started to embrace that too. Okay, literally in the first week of, I was telling clients, do not talk about it. Let's see what happens. Let's not sort of go in there yet. So that was a surprise. The other thing that was a surprise, and I want to paraphrase this or characterize it as saying, many of our clients are B2B clients, is there really wasn't as much of a pause in the action and a recalibration as I thought there would be. And I suspect only because I had a lot of conversations with clients and others at that time, is that folks were stuck at home and they wanted to keep working at these B2B tech companies and be a little bit distracted by all the scary news out there. So the wheels kept turning in a way for many of our clients that I was surprised by. The last thing I'll highlight is that the sort of social numbers and the metrics and the analytics we've been seeing have shown that folks are still very willing and continue to be willing to engage in content that comes from the brands throughout this period. So I didn't see the social metrics, whether it's impressions or engagement levels, go off a cliff as I thought they may.
Great, thank you. So we have one coming up just now. So do you think people are sick of hearing COVID-related news, tips, stories from both social media and content perspective?
I will say this. Opinion of one, yes. So I believe we have to shift from stage one of am I safe type of content to stage two of what are the new patterns that are going to emerge around the opening up, and especially from a thought leadership standpoint, I really think that we want to start talking about the new normal. Now, I would suggest in 2 months from now, I'll get the same question that says, is everyone sick of talking about the new normal? Maybe, okay? But now is really the time for us to be looking forward and starting to share content and talk about content that is really, what does this mean for the new normal? What does this mean for going forward? So that's the long answer. The short answer is I strongly suspect that folks are starting to sort of tune out content around this, yes.
Yeah, makes sense. And then we have one more. So how do you plan new social media initiatives and campaigns when you don't know what the future will bring?
This is really, piggybacks on two fundamental things that we've talked about. So number one, you have no choice, I believe, to do this. The deer in the headlights, the tread water, the just cut your activity until things clear up is not the right strategy. So given that, as we've touched on, the North Star is your customer. Okay? So how are they making plans? Okay, what is going to be helpful to them as they make critical decisions around going back to school in the fall, going on first trips again, going on, and from the B2B standpoint, planning events, right? So and the obvious one is, hey, things that were going to be in-person events now have to be online events. Now is the time to be figuring those things out. A product launch is very different today and will be different in the fall than it would have been, even 3 months ago, right? But the North Star is the customer, understanding what they're going through, understanding on the consumer side, the critical decisions they have to make around their family and their plans. And on the B2B side, how does it tie in? But that's the lens, is the customer, and then the lens is the questions they're asking, and then really tuning your marketing plans and social media plans accordingly. And again, I think the central thematics of, how are you helping given the current stage we're in, right? How are you making it about other people, okay? And acknowledging, the new patterns we're in, and how are you, thanking other people, building community and brand. Those should be the things that really highlight how we at minimum figure out what the plans will be for, the early fall.
Okay, thank you, Carter. It seems like that's all the questions we have today. I want to thank Carter for the great presentation. That was a lot of great insight on social media. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. We still have a lot of assets that you're welcome to look at today. You can also visit our Bright Talk channel. We have a lot of upcoming webinars coming up in the future for next quarter. And there's a lot of on-demand webinars you can view as well that have a lot of great content attached to them. But if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
right, thanks everyone.